I'm Scott Jangro, and my company's MechMedia, and I'm a publisher. I've been a publisher for 8 years now. Before that, I worked at Be Free and Commission Junction, so I worked on the network side. After that merger all happened, I left and became a publisher, and spent several years doing what I'm presuming most of you do, which is online publishing and affiliate marketing stuff. And over the years, built a lot of websites and built our own technology platform for publishing, and all of that evolved into this model that is now called Curation. But the stuff we were doing before Curation became kind of an official term for the subject. But I won't do a show of hands, but I'm guessing that most of you have experienced some of these things. You have an awesome idea for a website, and you spend a week to come up with an equally awesome domain name for that website. You give up and use a less than awesome domain name, set up WordPress, and all this stuff in your head, you dump it, you pour into these amazing blog posts, and spend a week or two on that, and then you stop, right? Lots of nods. Yeah. So why does that happen? Why do blogs fail? And I've had plenty of these myself, more than I can count, and I know a lot of people who do the same thing. And I think a lot about why this is, and I think it comes down to three things really. First of all, a couple of obvious no-brainers. Creating content is hard. Writing and writing and writing, and keep coming up with new stuff day after day, week after week, month after month. It's not for everybody, and even if you are a writer, to come up with stuff, new stuff, on a regular basis is a very difficult thing to do. Second of all, you kind of start, the stop and start problem. You go at it hard, you put your best stuff out there, and nobody's listening, right? It's a new site, nobody's paying attention to it, no one even knows it's there. So, you put it all out there, no one's listening, and you can only talk to nobody for so long. That's like the definition of crazy. So if you can keep it up long enough to start to get an audience, you can gain some momentum and get that encouragement. But that's a hard thing to do. I think the third thing that is a little more subtle and probably not as obvious is that why is the question, why are you starting this website? Because you want to write about this awesome topic is probably not a good enough reason to get an audience for it, right? It's for you in that case. You've got a great thing you want to talk about, and you just start talking about it. But your website or your blog should serve a purpose, right? And it should serve, a purpose for an audience of people that's sizable enough so that you can develop that audience and grow that audience, right? And so I think people kind of miss that aspect, which is have a purpose. Your website, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he said your website has a job to do, and it's to solve a problem, fulfill a need or an interest that people have out there. And I think if we miss that, then we've kind of started out in the wrong foot. And I use an analogy. It's kind of a simple one, but always comes back to me when I'm talking to people about creating websites and why they fail or not. And I think about a kid, wants to start a lemonade stand, and they go out to the end of their driveway and make some lemonade and get out there. But there's like we talked about, there's nobody coming by. And if you're just going out there and you're hoping that people are going to come by, you're just relying on chance or Google or whatever it is to drive you traffic. And if your driveway happens to be on a cul-de-sac, then you're going to get nothing but the lady walking her dog down the street. Or if you're lucky enough to be on a street corner in a busy area, you're going to get a little traffic. But what really matters is, why are you out there selling lemonade? And if that kid could have asked themselves that question, and the answer was something different than I want to go try selling lemonade, if it's there are thirsty people out there. Well, where are the thirsty people, and what do they want to drink? Maybe they don't even want to drink lemonade. But in reality, the answer to that question is, who his customers are the two neighbors who feel bad, and that's going to fail, right? So, that's the same thing with publishing. And curation, which is what we're going to talk about today, obviously, solves a few of those problems. It solves the problem of having to come up with content all the time. makes that process a bit easier. And it also solves the what's your purpose question. And those two things help solve the where's your audience question. So let's talk about curation. And when I think about curation, I think about an old man in a museum dusting off some old artifact somewhere. And with apologies, this is actually not a curator, but he's my picture of a curator. So, so I apologize to this man who's Nelson Rockefeller. And I found this photo, just, you'll see my photos are kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of a curation project in itself of me putting this presentation together. Every slide I just went to Flickr to find a photo that kind of matched it. This one came from the Boston Public Library, ironically probably put up there by a curator at that library, and he probably doesn't look like this. But curation, traditionally, the word curation means somebody who works at a museum, a gallery, a library, a zoo, is, the people that collect the information, the things that go in that collection. And that's the traditional definition of curation, and it's an old word, and it's weird to kind of think about it in online sense. And I kind of hope the word goes away, but because I don't think people can really get it, but it's here, so we're going to stick with it for a while. And so that's what regular curation is, and digital curation is just the same thing but online. So you have a topic, so just like a regular curator at a museum of modern art would go find not everything. Their job isn't to find every piece of art in the world and bring it into their museum. It's to find the stuff that people want to see that represents that theme, right? And digital curation is the same thing but online. So you have a topic and you're going to go off and find the best stuff on that topic from sources all over the internet. Do some creation of your own if you've got that in you. Otherwise, there's millions of people already creating content out there. All right. So a couple years ago, so we've been doing this forever, right? It's human nature to share. We're on Twitter, Facebook, find something cool, we push it out there. But we're just kind of throwing it out there to the world. And a couple of years ago, this concept of curation kind of came of its own, and some of the thought leaders in the industry kind of just started to make it more of an official term, and that's when the curation concept came more formally to the web. So here, the people on this slide, I kind of, for me, think about as the kind of the grandfathers of digital curation. First guy the guy in the middle is Steven Rosenbaum, and he did a few things. He started the site magnify.net. He did a lot of things, but specifically in relation to curation. There's a website called magnify.net, and that is a video curation platform. And I think this might have been one of the first curation platforms that were kind of formally taking on this concept of curation. And the idea is that you sign up for that site, you create a channel, and it's about a topic like maybe Jim Kukul in the room, fly fishing. And it uses keywords to go out and find every day while you're sleeping videos from YouTube, Vidler, Vimeo, all the video websites based on those keywords, and pulls them in and shows them to you in an aggregation model. And you hand-pick these videos and put them in your channel, and the people who are interested in this stuff, like Jim, would hopefully follow that channel and find that interesting. Now, this is hard to do with video, and curating video is tough because you got to watch hours of video to find some good stuff. But your job is to filter through, as the curator of that channel, to filter through that good stuff and find the stuff that your audience, that you've identified as your audience, is interested in. An example of a success story. A couple years ago, I was at a small conference with Steve, and we were talking, and he was telling some stories about Magnify, and there was a pretty cool example that happened to a Magnify channel owner. This was at the time frame when Susan Boyle from Britain's Got Talent became a huge hit, and some guy, he's a fan, he built a Magnify site, Susan Boyle, and he put it on susan-boyle.net, and he curated a bunch of videos. And this is what people are looking for who are interested in a particular topic. Is just, if they're searching around for Susan Boyle stuff, they just want to see some videos of her singing, and he built the resource for this very quickly and easily with that platform. And long story short, he ended up, I think, selling if I got my story right, he ended up selling the site to Susan Boyle, and it turned out to be a good deal for him. But so that's how curation can work. Steve also wrote a book called Curation Nation. It's a pretty good book. It goes through kind of the history of curation, and so if you're interested in this stuff, I can recommend it. It's a pretty quick read. He goes through, how Huffington Post is kind of his big example of early curation. They've gone well beyond that now, but and some of the other issues that come along with curation, that people raise, like copyright and ethical issues and questions like that. So that's a good read. The guy on the left is Robert Scoble, or Scobleizer, and if you don't know who he is, he's got the best job in the world. He works for Rackspace, but they just basically pay him to go look around and meet people and read about technology and write about it. So he's a curator by nature, and that's what he does, and he finds cool stuff and he writes about it. And so 2 years ago, he wrote a blog post on his blog Scobleizer called "The 7 Needs of Real-Time Curators," and he's really into real-time stuff. So one aspect of curation is tapping into an event that's going on right now, and an example is like the earthquake in Haiti, or the tsunami in Japan, or the World Series championship Game 7. Something that's going on and creating a flurry of activity that people are really interested in. And in order to read about it, they'd have to go out and read all these sources of it. But if someone's doing this curation and pulling all this great stuff together into one place, that can become a source of that information. And that's what Scoble tapped into and what he'd like to do. And back then, there were no tools to really enable this. So you're cobbling things together, as you can with the different tools that are out there. So he wrote this post, and basically it was a call to action for the industry and the VC and Silicon Valley to come up with some tools and solutions for curation, tools that he and people could use to curate, because this was becoming an essential aspect to the internet. And so these are things like you need to be able to bundle, and he called it bundling, and there's lots of words for a collection of things: collections, lists, bundles, boards. So that was kind of obvious, number one. But you need to be able to reorder, put things in order. So the order you find things in is not necessarily the order you want to tell a story in when you're curating. You want to be able to editorialize, he said, which is adding value and a perspective to it. So as you're bringing stuff in, there might be a story behind a tweet from somebody in Haiti that you want to tell along with it. And so in this platform, this publishing platform that he wanted, he wanted to be able to add his own perspective and tell a story along with each of these tweets, and to be able to edit stuff and get comments and get push stuff out to social networks and blogs and this whole platform he kind of spec'd out. And an interesting thing happened, which we'll get into in the next slide. But there was this call to action. I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but it really spurred an activity in the space. The last pick, the guy on the right he's a guy from Microsoft. I think he was just hanging out with these guys at South by Southwest. I don't know how to say his name. He works for Microsoft, but he's not. I was going to say he's not important, but I think someone probably thinks he's important. The guy on the bottom, his name is Robin Good, and he's from Italy, and he's just this crazy guy who loves curation. And if you want to his website's called masternewmedia.org, and just go check it out if you're interested in curation tools and curation in general. And the guy is just passionate about online publishing and curating, and he's just a great guy to watch his videos. And he's got an amazing resource of a giant mind map of every curation tool in the world. So check that out. But so as I mentioned, kind of after that little flurry of activity and call to action, all these sites and services started just cropping up, and a lot of them, some of these names look funny, but if you say them out loud, they basically sound like curate. So curate and curate and curata and curated by and magnifies on here. And so those are all these sites and so these are all tools that you can use to do curation. Set up your own, like Magnify, set up a channel, set up a topic, set up a list, and curate. Some of them have tools that help you with discovery. They all have tools that help you with publishing, distribution. But also some cool stuff happened. Sites like Delicious kind of evolved their model and went from just plain bookmarking and tagging to building pages and topics and moving stuff and organizing things into there. So some big companies, and Posterous, who's a Tumblr competitor, created this concept of spaces. So they moved from this blog-like chronological list of of posts you do to be able to organize your post into topics. And so as curation has become this publishing model of its own, how we look at content online has changed. And instead of what we're used to, which is this chronological list of posts that go on forever in blogs, curation are in like grid format, and information is in bits and pieces and organized together. So as much as pulling information together, curation is about organization and bringing topics and keeping the stuff up to date and making it really valuable. Quora is also a cool story recently. Quora is a Q&A site, really popular. Just in December, they introduced a whole curation model to it, and they call it boards. And so editors on Quora can pull in questions and answers from all over Quora and pull them into topic areas, and pull in links from elsewhere and pull them into these topic areas. And I think most notable now is Pinterest. If any of these things, you guys have probably heard of Pinterest. It's been pretty big in the past month or two. Getting a lot of attention in the affiliate space too, which tells you that it's kind of that curation is kind of going mainstream, and that there's just regular people out there posting stuff to Pinterest, and it's the curation model. And I kind of thought of 2011 as the year of curation, having kind of been, involved in this, but I've seen a lot of the 2012 kind of prediction posts and people saying that 2012 is the year of curation, and that's mostly because of Pinterest. And if you want to just like dig into curation and try stuff out, I think the biggest one out there right now that's like the full package of curation stuff is Scoop It, and they've got a really cool service. I'll take this opportunity to my small self-serving plug. We've been taking our technology platform that we've been building over the years at my company, MechMedia, and have turned it into a publishing platform. So I'll humbly put my Sharist, which is the logo you see at the bottom of every screen, into this curation mix as service providers. I'm not going to talk about it, but any more than that, really. But if you want to talk about that stuff, or any of this, I'd love to afterwards. All right, so let's take a step back and just talk about why this is all important or critical, I think. The internet is growing exponentially. Some people say there's too much information out there. I think that there can never be too much information out there. If there's any one bit of information that someone is looking for that isn't there, then there's not enough information on the internet. But it's growing exponentially, and it's a problem for companies like Google to keep track of this. I think I'm going to misquote Eric Schmidt right now, but he was at a conference in 2008, and he said something to the effect of, since 2002, so that 6-year span, we've created more information than the world has created since the history of man until 2002. That's kind of the rate of growth. And I've heard other numbers, like every couple of days in a couple of years, that the size of the internet's going to double. So there's just a lot of stuff out there. Some of it's good, most of it's less than good, and someone's going to filter through all this stuff. And if we just leave it to Google, then I think we're missing out on a lot of good stuff, right? So as you are consumers of, think of yourself as consumers of information, and you're interested in something, whether it's fly fishing like Jim, or golf, or photography, or cooking, or whatever it is, you've probably got, unless you're totally obsessed with it, like Nate is with coffee, then you're probably just kind of a casual observer of whatever this topic is that you're interested in. And so what do you do when you're looking for this stuff? If you happen to be poking around, you go to Google and you look and you find stuff. And you kind of collect your stable of blogs and follow people on Facebook and Twitter. And then it's kind of just random how you find out about things, right? You're hopefully following enough people that you find out about it if enough people are talking about it. But it's easy to miss stuff, right? So this is the spectrum. So there's the random, which you get from stumble upon Facebook and Twitter, that you just happen to get by the time you spend online, and things just hit you, or very specific searches and very specific things you're looking for. Obviously, that's where Google excels. But if you're just looking for information, latest information, this is where the kind of the curation sweet spot is, where there's a place for people to serve that need for others. And there's so much information out there in the world that every topic there's room for multiple curators, because it's not just someone's already curating on that topic. There's no reason to. You look at politics, and I was talking to a gentleman out here earlier, and he asked me if Matt Drudge is a curator, and I'd say yes, he is, but he's not the only right-wing curator of political issues. There's lots of them out there. So there's lots of room for lots of people with lots of perspectives to serve their own audience who likes what they have to say. Formatting issue. Didn't look like this on my computer. That says aggregation. So as you think about becoming curators yourself and publishing with this model of doing content curation, something to remember and keep in mind is that aggregation is not the same as curation. And another tongue-in-cheek picture here, I don't know if you can tell, but I was thinking conveyor belt when I was looking for aggregation representation pictures, and a conveyor belt of spam came up, and I had to use it. And I'm not calling all aggregation spam, but you can certainly be spammy with it. But the thing to be careful about is that it's tempting as you're curating and you're finding stuff and you're pulling stuff from elsewhere. It's tempting to automate. It's tempting to find RSS feeds that are usually valuable and just let it in to your sites and let it into your curation projects without filtering it manually. And that's a danger that you can get into no matter where you're curating to, whether it's your own property or whether you're pushing things out automatically to Facebook or Twitter. You're diminishing the value of what you do. So word of caution against that sort of temptation. Curation is work. It's just a different kind of work than creating content. All right, so switch gears a little bit here, and I want to give folks kind of a more practical perspective to maybe how to get started with a website, how to dig in with curation as a publishing model. I could spend another 2 hours going through the individual tools and that sort of thing, but I don't think that would be valuable. So let's go back to that question: why do blogs fail in the first place? Right? It's because it's hard to get content, it's hard to get an audience, and lots of people probably start websites or blogs without a purpose behind it. So the first thing you do, and obviously this is the first thing you're going to be doing, and you hear this a lot, and you hear a lot in presentations at places like this: choose a topic that you're passionate about, that you know a lot about, that you don't mind spending a lot of time on. But beyond that, choose a topic that serves a purpose, that people have a problem that you're solving, that there's an interest that you're filling, that there's a need that you're fulfilling for an audience out there. And that's an important aspect in getting an audience. Because if you're just throwing stuff out there that doesn't serve any specific purpose, you're not going to get the traction that you need to get the audience to keep going. And I think that's, in my mind, that's the biggest reason why blogs fail. Okay, so we have our topic. Now, think about who has this problem that you are serving, that you're solving, and create a profile in your mind of your ideal fan. And I say fan instead of customer because you want these people to love what you do. You want them to come by with everything you publish and have someone say, wow, that's awesome. Because at that point is your opportunity to get them to be your fan. And if you can get the customers that are coming by, the visitors that are coming by, to be a fan of yours, to like what you do, then they're going to give you permission to contact them in the future rather than just coming and going. So every opportunity you have to work with somebody is an opportunity for them to become a fan of yours. And if you think about and think very specifically about who your ideal customer is, give them how old are they? Are they male or female? What do they do? How much money do they make? What kind of car do they drive? Give them create an avatar of this person and give them a name, and everything you do in publishing on your website, make it like you're talking to them. And if you're talking to that one person in your communications and in your marketing, it's much more personal and it makes a connection with that person. And no matter who's reading, even if they're not that person that you've created, they're going to feel it. They're going to feel that one-to-one. If you're talking to everybody and you're talking broadly and vaguely, that's an impersonal style, and that's not going to get you that kind of audience that you're looking for. All right. Now the curation part comes in. So you've got your topic and you've got your ideal person that you're creating content for or curating content for, and you got to go out and find it. And this is this is still the hard part. A lot of these tools that I mentioned are going to make more and more as time goes on, and these tools get built up, are going to make it easier to do that. A lot of these tools have, you can pull in RSS feeds as sources, keyword searches on Twitter, Facebook, Google searches, YouTube, and make it easy to aggregate this stuff for you to look at, and you hand pick things from that and curate. And as I said before, just as important as finding great content to put in your website is the organization of this content. And your topics that you're writing about, it's not necessarily going to be one topic. It might be several topics. And these things get organized separately. And that's what these curation tools provide, more so than blogging software or other CMS type software, is that they're built to create lists or collections. And so if you go to Scoop.it and you build a topic, you're going to curate on that topic, and you can create a second and third topic if you want. And make your topics such that they're not too vague or too specific. You don't want to be curating on the term golf, because there's just so much out there you can't possibly curate on all that volume of information. So be more specific so that the stuff you're finding is much more manageable from a curation standpoint. Next step, publish. And if there's one thing I want you to take with you from this presentation, it's the point that I'm going to make next, which is when you publish and you create things online and you put stuff out there, I think the biggest mistake that affiliates make as a publishing model and in their publishing activity is that they act as, their single focus is to get people to come in and click on a link as quickly as possible out. Get that click on the affiliate link, set the cookie, get them off. So you got traffic coming in. Hopefully you've got natural search traffic. Maybe you're paying for traffic. The number one priority is to get them to click on an affiliate link in most people's minds. And I think that is, that's the highest conversion that you're going to get on that particular bit of traffic. But what you're missing out on is the opportunity to make that customer yours, to make that person a fan of yours. And if all they're doing is coming through and getting a coupon code or getting some information on a product that they were looking for, then they're not going to remember who you were. They're not going to remember what your site was. And the next time they go searching for something, they're going to go back to Google again. So those people are not your customers. You're borrowing Google's customers and you're handing them to a merchant. And that is great and easy when the traffic's coming. But if the traffic goes away, then what are you left with? You're left with nothing. So I call it paying yourself first. Right? So if you're lucky enough to have one person come to your site, pay yourself first, try to get them as a user of yours, as a fan of yours, as a newsletter subscriber. Build an email list and do your damnedest to get them to subscribe to it. Give something away, a free ebook or something that's just going to get them to give you their email address. And they're not going to do that if your site isn't great and you have good content and you're solving a problem for them. But that should be in my mind, your first goal is to get one of these visitors, every visitor that comes in, to be your customer before you hand it off to be somebody else's customer. And if you can do that, then in my mind, you're on the road to making yourself Google-proof. We all hear the horror stories of Panda and algorithm updates and traffic going away, and I've got a story later that, from a personal experience that make this point clearly, but you don't need Google anymore, at least temporarily, until you can figure that traffic thing out again. Because if you've built a base of thousands of people who you can continue to contact who are interested in what you've got, that's where the money is. And distribution. So build your own asset. So there's a lot of tools we can curate and publish all over the place, and that's great and all great as part of a marketing strategy. So as you distribute and get your content out there, a big marketing strategy is obviously to get your presence everywhere that you can, whether it's these curation sites, whether it's e-zine articles, Facebook, Twitter, and social networks. But make sure you publish to something you own as a hub of your activity, because you own that, and you're building an asset for yourself with every bit of activity that you do. And if you are just giving your content elsewhere, you're giving your content, if you're just putting up, and I'm not dissing on Pinterest, I think it's a great service, but if you just have a Pinterest page and you're putting stuff there, that's their content that you're building for them. And yeah, you're building some following there and you get some presence, and that's great marketing, but that should be to drive them to you and make them your customer. Pinterest went away, your content's gone, and your followers there are gone. Some services you can export your followers, but most you can't. So keep that in mind as you build your, be careful to build your own assets. Use a service or tool that you know is yours, that you can get all the information out that you're putting in. But at the same time, do distribute out to your social networks, email. You want to publish to where your customers are. You can't expect that people are just going to keep coming to your site every day. These aren't people who are obsessed with this topic like you are necessarily. They are casual observers of it, and they would love to get a weekly email of this stuff, for example. Or maybe they're following you on Facebook or following you on Twitter. So you want to be where they are. And to do that, you're reaching your audience the best. And then engage with your audience and make sure that you are communicating and connecting with your audience as an overall publishing strategy. And in doing so, as you get your visitors in, and you're doing it in a way whether they're coming in cold through natural traffic or whether you're communicating with them through social media or bringing them in with an email, write your content in a way that gets them to engage with you. Ask them to give you their feedback. Let them comment, but encourage them to do that. Tell them to do that. And what you're doing is creating a connection. Tell them, if you're sending emails, ask them to reply to you. Let them know let you know what they're thinking. And that builds a connection. And it also trains your audience to respond to you. And as you get people trained to respond, then it's kind of like a Pavlovian thing. So you get to the point where you send an email out and people are going to respond, and you curate a bunch of content and give it to them, and and you're doing a good job. They appreciate that, and if you ask them to do something, they'll give you something back. And that initially is in the form of comments and feedback and likes, but down the road, you can ask them to take out their credit card and buy something that you're recommending, or signing up for a membership site, or buying an ebook. And they're going to respond much more favorably when they're used to responding to you in general. All right, so with curation in mind, I think of curation as a tool, and I think of it as a mindset for publishing and an overall strategy. But it's bigger than just curating and pulling in content. It's an entire publishing strategy. It's not just a website anymore. It's an online presence. So think about what kind of audience can you build on your topic, not what website you can put up and what you can write about, but what problems are you solving, for whom are you solving it for, and where can you get that content out to, and how can you build your own asset? That's my last slide. I have a kind of a story I wanted to tell, kind of an example of something that I've learned from my own publishing experience. Some of you know this story, at least some of it. I'm kind of internet famous, and it has nothing to do with affiliate marketing. I'm known as like the TV repair guy. And the wheels started turning on this about 10 years ago, and when I bought a Samsung DLP television. And 4 years later, it broke. And I took it apart. I went online, learned all about what the problem was. I took it apart and fixed it, and it was actually pretty easy to do. And I put it back together again, and it all worked, and I was happy. But then my affiliate marketing and SEO brain kicked in, and I said, hey, I should write about this on my blog and see what happens. So I took the TV apart again and built it again, taking pictures along the way, and made a cookbook, step-by-step instructions on how to fix this thing. And what happened after that was pretty remarkable, because I put this on my blog, Jangro.com, which at the time was all about affiliate marketing, industry stuff, and I put a TV repair post on this blog, which had some pretty good SEO, link juice to it, and it took over the blog, and it became like the purpose of my website, and it dwarfed all traffic, and very quickly I was getting thousands of visits a day from people with this exact problem, which is apparently some chronic problem with this Samsung television, and it's still there. I'm still dominate the first page for many Samsung DLP repair search terms. If you're curious, search for Samsung DLP lamps, and you'll see this, some of these posts that I have here. But so thousands and thousands of views, thousands of comments on just this one blog post. It was just crazy, and I was making a lot of money. I was making it at one point. I was making 100 or 200 bucks a day just on people coming by and buying this $100 part through an affiliate link. And I was doing that. I was getting them in and getting them out, right? I was giving them what they needed, and I was solving a problem for them, which was good, but I wasn't capturing them as users. So while you could think of making tens of thousands of dollars over several years, paying for the television many times over as a success, now the traffic's gone. These TVs are dying out, and they're still getting some traffic, but it's only maybe 100 visits a day, and I'm not making money on it anymore. So at this point, I look back on that and thinking from this perspective, that was a failure for me, because what I should have been doing is capturing every one of those users as one of my fans. I should have put a newsletter together, given them, and identified in my mind who these people are that are visiting. They're not TV repair people. They're not technical. They're just people with a lot of money, buy expensive TVs, and want to fix them. And that's you can create content that appeals to that, and I could have put together an email campaign that's like, hey, this is what happened to your TV now. In a month, this is what's going to happen to it, and it's going to break again, it's going to break again. And I could have built an email campaign out of that, and I probably would have got tens of thousands of subscribers from the hundreds of thousands of visitors that I've had over these several years. But now it's too late for that. And at this point, now all their TVs are dying and dead. I became like Mr. If I bought this TV, my friends and family all bought the same thing. And I could have been that thing to these people had I had the foresight to build that audience out of that traffic I was getting. But I just thought of it as some silly thing that was unrelated to the topic of my blog and anything. I'm not a TV expert. I just happen to know a little more about TVs than these people did. And that's all you really need to do to be an authority and be able to give people some value in whatever you're doing with your publishing. So that's a story that I wanted to tell, lesson that I learned, and maybe you have some similar experiences on your own. That's the presentation. Here's the question thing. Would I consider Chris Brogan a curator? I have to admit that I don't read a lot of Chris Brogan. So the stuff that I read of Chris Brogan, I think feels more to me like he's creating content, but I don't know. Hi, yes.
I was on recent webinar where they talked about curation as an SEO strategy
Mm-hmm.
and like ranking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The question is using curation as an SEO strategy, and is that? I guess you're wondering if it's if I think it's a good strategy. I do think it's a good strategy. I think the important thing with any SEO strategy is to it all comes down to adding value. Google says serve your customer and we'll be happy with it. And I believe that, and I think it applies, and I think it applies more than ever. So if what you're doing is adding value and solving a problem and people like it, then Google will pick up those signals and it will rank, and it is an SEO strategy. The stuff that we build with curation does great in SEO, and it's because we add to it, and we're creating something unique. Our goal is to always create something unique. So again, if you're curating, you're pulling stuff in, and it feels like it's duplicate content, right? Which is not good, not a good SEO strategy. But as part of that, if you are for everything that you curate, you're adding content to, adding your own perspective to it, that's new and unique. And the organization of this stuff in a list or a bundle or a board is something that's in itself unique and valuable. And those things can rank very well. So what's an example of adding value to something? So again, your goal is to solve a problem for somebody. You've got an audience, hopefully, of people who are interested in the stuff that you're curating. And they are hopefully interested in your perspective on this information that you're curating as well. So one example of adding value is adding your perspective to it, commenting on why you think this is something that they should read and check out, or why this is or why this is not great. You know, it just but or picking out the important bits and giving your version of it. You know, do a book report on a great blog post. You know, that's adding value too, condensing it and making it interesting. Any more questions? Oh. All right, so where's the line between curation and new content? I don't think there is one. I think it's a spectrum that, there's, again, it's a publishing model rather than something that you can just point at and say that's curation, that's content, which is why I think it's probably hard to answer that Chris Brogan question. We all get content from elsewhere, and we're all influenced by things. I think if you're one evidence of or an indicator of curation is if you're pulling in a link from somewhere and referencing it and talking about it. I mean, that's kind of what I picture as kind of classic curation. They usually involve if you're curating on stuff and you're pulling in stuff and you're hopefully going to give credit back. That's what I kind of picture as curation. A couple of digital curators who do an excellent job at it. My favorite curator is actually a couple of friends of mine. And it's really comes down to what you're interested in. Famous or popular curators. I don't know. I mean, I can't even really name one. It's really a personal thing, and like my favorite curator is my business partner, and I mostly just read what he curates. And he's got a site that he does that too, and it's kind of an internal tool for us. But that's what I'm interested in seeing, right? And there's some people in this industry who do some great stuff that I consider curation that I like to pay attention to. But it's such a personal thing. Any other questions? Sure. Curation is a publishing model. You can those are kind of orthogonal. So the question is curation the same as blogging? You can curate on a blog, right? So you could. Curation is the type of publishing that you're doing. A blog is a publishing platform that you write on, and you can curate in there, pull in a link out to where your source was, write about it, and all of a sudden WordPress is a curation platform, right? And a lot of people do that. But blogging is such a big term. It's just kind of taken on its own definition, and it's just I don't know. Blogging to me is just writing online, and how you find the content that you write about, whether you're coming up with it all yourself and researching and doing nothing but creating unique and new stuff. If you want to call that blogging, you can. I call it writing or creation of content. Curation is more pulling stuff from elsewhere on a topic, adding your value to it. But that could happen on a blog. But it's kind of semantics. Hi. Yeah, it may have been curation. It may have, well, again, I mean, the definition is tough to point at anything and say that's curation. But so the question was about duplicate content, and this person got accused of duplicating content that was available elsewhere. And I don't know, it probably, there are people out there who, are very sensitive to their content getting used, and whether you used it appropriately or not, it sounds like you probably used it just fine. I mean, there's fair use, and there's citing and quoting and all sorts of things. So I think that as long as you're giving credit, as long as you're not copying, there's copyright issues in the world, right? And that's, those are legal things. And so, as long as you're not copying entire posts and publishing them, that's a copyright issue, never, regardless of whether you give attribution, right? And then there's fair use, which is posting enough to make the point of what you're talking about. And it sounds like that's probably what you did, and you're probably fine. Though no, I'm not an IP attorney. And the link back doesn't matter. None of it really matters, the attribution. What matters is, whether you copied something in its entirety or enough to be considered too much. And that gets down to legal definitions, I think. But, so I guess you want to try to err on the side of not copying too much. But you're gonna get emails like that, and all you can do is either take it down or ignore it until. And if you ignore it, then that might end up with more work or contacts later or not. Any other questions? I'm here afterwards if you want to, if you've got any that you want to just ask in person, in private. And thank you for your time.